Hey, what's up guys? Today we're going to talk about storytelling or creating a story within the markets. Now currently we're on GJ. The reason why we are on GJ is I've been doing analysis, too much analysis, and again it's the same thing. If I do analysis on EU again, it's the same thing. It's the same analysis on my previous video. Now storytelling, why do we need to create a story, or why do we need to tell a story from the markets? Now, the good thing about telling a story from the markets, it allows you to be flexible on both directions of the market. It's either up or to the downside. You can create probable stories for where price might go. Now, for example, currently on GJ, we see a higher low, higher high. We see a break of structure over here on this point. As you can clearly see, price went below it. Now, we can create a story, or we can have expectations from a story. Now, is the story, we don't know the actual story, but we can create a speculation of a story, or we can speculate on the story or create expectations. Now, either this is a liquidity grab for price to continue to the upside, or the more probable thing for me personally is we see this as a break of structure for now price to continue to the downside, something like that. Now, price wanting to tap the supply zone here, then continue to the downside, hence breaking the structural point. Now, we can then tell ourselves, the cool thing about storytelling is the same thing with top-down analysis. We mix other time frames from different other time frames. Now, as you can see, we see a break of structure here. Now, if we go on lower time frames, the lower time frames is gonna look like this, a bullish move to the upside. We then can create a story mixing different time frames. Why is the lower time frame forming a bullish move to the upside? It's probably wanting to follow the larger time frame structure. What is the larger time frame structure? Even though for me, we are forming a shift to the downside now, since we see a break of structure here, we still need to do a retracement to the upside. Hence, supply zone here. We now want price to tap that supply zone, then continue to the downside, following the larger time frame over the larger time frame structure. Hence, on lower time frame structure, it's creating a push or a bullish move to the upside because we want a retracement. The lower time frames is basically on the retracement of this larger time frame, retracement to the upside, grab this supply zone here, then continue to the downside. Now, what we can do is go on lower time frames. For example, the 1 month time frame. Now, what do we see the 1 month time frame doing? Now, what we can do is start from this zone. We start on larger zones, that higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. We then see a break of structure from this higher low, adding confluence on our larger time frame structure. Now we can add this as, where's the low point? This is the low point, so a lower low, now a possibly lower high. Again, this is technically still not the lower high. This could be called the lower high once we break this structural point over here. We break the lower low. Same thing with this one. For example, let's say price hasn't reached this. Let's say price is still here. If price hasn't broken this point yet, this previous higher high, this is technically still not the higher low, but we can expect this could be the higher low. The reason why for that is, clear example is, look at this price point. Let me just clear these things up. Look at this price point over here. If you see, expect this as the lower low, lower high. Now again, we cannot call this an official lower high yet because price can do this. As you can see, range, go higher, then this could be a higher low. Unless if price breaks this lower low over here, then we can shift the wordings or the names of this point. Let's say price broke here. Now this could be the lower low. Now this could be our lower high. Then price does a pullback, breaks this lower low again. Now we change the names again, lower low, lower high, just following the trend overall. That's why I would say that this is officially not the lower high. Again, price, unless we see a break of structure here. Again, price can continue to the upside, come mitigate some supply zones over here, then continue to the downside. Now, if we see, this is where the storytelling comes in. Where was our what was the story of our larger time frame structure, the 12-month structure? We see it was looking something like this. Oh, something like this. A break of structure from that. Okay, let's just do this. Break of structure from that higher low. Now, currently price is somewhere here. We want price to do a retracement higher on that supply zone to tap into it and continue then to the downside, mitigating the supply zone first before going lower. Now, what do we see here? If price really wants to, if price is done continuing on the pullback, so on the larger time frame again, if price is happy with this pullback, because I think price is somewhere here currently. If the banks or the institutions are completely done with this pullback, if they really want to go lower now, we can expect price to obviously break this point easily without ranging this much. But as you can see, price is ranging this much on this specific zone over here, reacting to this demand zone here. Now, two things we can consider again. It is either creating liquidity, then after creates liquidity from this support line over here, from this overall support line over here, we then grab those liquidity and breaking the lower lows at the same time. Or this could be creation of liquidity to then continue to the upside, meaning both sides. There are the two options are grabbing liquidity on either side. So if it wants to go higher, then grabs liquidity on the upside. If it wants to continue lower, following the larger time frame structure, it then grabs this liquidity low. But currently, what do I see? Price is reacting on this demand zone with a huge range. Again, we are just speculating. We cannot predict the market. Now we can collide stories from different structures. Now, what do we see over here? Price reacting on this demand zone. Why is it reacting? It's probably wanting to have confluence with that larger time frame structure. Again, the larger time frame structure is we want price to go higher on these supply zones over here to tap and mitigate it, then continue to the downside. Hence, we are creating stories on why price is failing to break this low over here, because it's probably wanting to continue to the upside. No, again, guys, the same thing happens on way more lower time frames. I'll show you a bit. Let's just go on start on the 4R. Let's imagine the 4R. Now, what do we see the 4R doing? As you can see, we can mark up as lower high, breaks this point over here. Let's just start from this lower high, lower low since a break, possibly a lower high again, but fails to break it. Why did it fail to break it? Because it's probably shifting its order flow. Now, we see this as the higher low, higher high. Now, we want price to continue to do a retracement on some of these demand zones over here before continuing to the upside. Now, what we can do again, so we have a story now for price. We want price to retrace on the downside before continuing to the upside. Now, we can connect that story on lower time frames. Now, do we see why? We can ask ourselves then, why is the lower time frame breaking structure, or in other terms, forming a bearish order flow? Again, what are we expecting on the higher time frame or on other time frames? We want the other time frames first to do a retracement, tap on these demand zones, then continue to the upside. Hence, this is the reason why, the possible reason why on lower time frames it's forming a bearish order flow. Now, what we can do is we can mark up supply zones for something like that, and here for price, where price can react on. So we want price to either retract, continue to the downside, following the 2 time frame structure. Again, 2 time frame structure, we want a retracement on the 4R, and we are on a bearish downside, an bearish order flow on the 30-minute. So we want price. The probable thing for price to do is for price to continue to the downside. Now we can add another. So that's our current story. Now, what we can do is if we don't see a break of structure on lower time frames somewhere on within that zone, so we marked up a supply zone here. We want price again, tap into the supply zone, then continue to the downside, or tap on the supply zone, then continue to the downside. Now, if we see a structural shift on lower time frames, again, this is not the refined supply zones. This is just a more broader or more general supply zones. If we see A on lower time frames, it's gonna look like this. If we see a break of structure on lower time frames, we can then add confluence or combine different stories. Again, on specifically on the 4R, we want a retracement, right, to the downside. So obviously on the 30-minute, we want the 30-minute time frame to form a bearish move to the downside. Now on the way more lower time frames, maybe on the 5-minute, the 5-minute is currently on a bullish move to the upside. Why is it on a bullish move? As you can see here on lower time frames, that's gonna look like something like this. Now, if we see a break of structure from that point on that specific lower time frame, we are combining different stories. Why is it? We can ask ourselves, why is it breaking that structural point over here? It's probably wanting to follow the larger time frame story, which is the 30-minute. What is the 30-minute story? We are on a bearish move to the downside. Currently, we're in a supply zone. Now we want price to react from that supply zone, then continue creating new lower lows. Now, I hope you guys learned something new, and that's it. Thanks for watching.